So from elementary, you may be familiar with a Venn diagram. It's used to compare and contrast different things. It could be dogs and cats. It could be just different qualities of different items. It could also be comparing prime numbers and composite numbers. They just compare what things have in common. One of our standards is to classify rational numbers, whole numbers, and integers using a Venn diagram. Okay, so this is the traditional Venn diagram that we are familiar with. Okay, there are two other ones that are used more commonly for this. This is the one that was actually on last year's STAR test and is also on your semester exam last week, right here. This one right there. Okay, and it looked like that and said which of these would be placed in the shaded area. Okay, well, the shaded area here, it would mean which one is a whole number, an integer, and a rational number. Okay, I want to point out a couple of things. If you say a number like 3.5, well, 3.5 is not a whole number and it's not an integer, but it is a rational number. So it would go here. The number 3/4 as a fraction would be down here because it's a rational number. The number -7 is a rational number and an integer. So -7 goes here. There is no number that's an integer but not a rational number. So there's nothing that could go up here. Okay? The -7, anything that can be written as number a over b, where b is not 0. So anything that can be written as a fraction. Well, -7 can be written as -7 over 1. So that makes it a rational number. But it's also an integer because it could be on a number line, right? Now, the whole numbers were just like integers, but they're all positive. So if I said the number 5, well, 5 is a whole number, so it fits here, but 5 is also an integer and a rational number, so it goes here in the middle. Okay, and this is the most specific spot. There is nothing that's going to be a whole number and an integer that's not a rational number. There is nothing that's going to be a whole number but not an integer or rational number. And there's actually nothing that's going to be a whole number and a rational number that's not an integer, because a whole number is 5. Well, that's also an integer. So these are actually the only three parts of this that you would see. Okay? It's because 5 would be 5 over 1, right? They're still rational numbers, and it's still an integer because those are all the positive and negative ones. Okay? Now, another type of Venn diagram that you may see is the one that looks like layered circles, where the outside here is rational numbers. Okay, so the rational numbers, remember, was any number that can be written as a over b, where b is not 0. So anything you can write as a fraction. Your decimals that are not the ones that go on forever. Any fraction, any whole number, integers, all of those are rational numbers. So they're all in this group. But within that group, there's actually another more specific set of numbers that are called integers. Okay, and those are the ones that are on a number line. They're positive and they're negative. So like -2. Well, integers are also rational numbers because it can be written as -2 over 1. So an integer is, this -2 is an integer and it's a rational number. But we don't put it out here because we have to be the most specific as possible. There's also a whole number right here. Okay, the whole numbers are only the positive ones. So the number 14 is a whole number because it's the positive number, but it's also an integer because those are positive and negatives that are on the number line, right? But it's also a rational number because it can be written as 14 over 1. So when you put them on a Venn diagram, there's a very specific place to go. But if I said, okay, the number -12, what is it? Well, it's a rational number and an integer, but it's not a whole number. So sometimes you actually see this where it'll just ask you and have you list them, and you have to list all of them possible. You can't just say it's a rational number. You have to say it's also an integer. Okay? That's all.